Can Doug DeMuro bring all the money for this super rare 1988 Lamborghini Countach on his platform, Cars and Bids, or will the seller be left crying, wishing that they had sold it on BAT? Find out now.
Get those words!
Yeah, you guys are excited about it because you know what's up. It's time for a brand new episode of the Bid Nerd, your daily nerd out on the most interesting car of the day from all the automotive enthusiast auction sites. My name is John Polnick, coming to you from downtown Las Vegas in the Container Park, along with my partner Michael Deeb in San Francisco. You're smooth. I don't see a cloud of mist. It doesn't look like it's freezing in there. You still have the puffy jacket.
I do, man. It's just cold in here. It's always like 55 degrees down in the dungeon.
Yeah, well, so being here in Las Vegas, it's not cold at all.
Yeah, the newest one I heard, the name nomination for the studio, somebody called it, Cousin Mark called it the Bid Cave.
Bid Cave is good.
Cave.
We are looking for the Nerd Herd to help us name your studio. So put it in the description. Put it in the comments below. I don't know. I'm going to give everybody access to the descriptions. Look, I guess I'm flubbered. I'm having a hard time with my words because I'm just so excited about our special guest today. We have a true expert, someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Lucky Lopez is in the house. Deeb, you screwed up,
gentlemen.
Yeah, it's going good. You are warm. I'm warm. Michael Deeb is freezing. Isn't it good to be in Las Vegas, Lucky?
Don't rub it in.
100%. Can't beat the weather, the people, and some of the crazy bids that go on here. So I'm super excited. It's been, is this our third episode? And it's been so I'm looking forward to probably dinging this one wrong. And I'm sure what I'm going to say is going to be a little bit controversial when it comes to our special car, but we'll see how it goes.
All right.
that is going after it before we even get started, and I love it. If you guys don't know who Lucky Lopez is, you got to check out his channel. He's a way bigger deal than we are. So Nerd Nation, if you haven't already followed him, go check out Lucky Lopez. His channel is epically good. If you want to know anything about the car business, if you're a consumer, if you're someone who is getting into the automotive business, if you've been in the automotive industry for years, Lucky is the guy that's got something to teach you. So check out his channel. New videos every week, twice a week, once a week.
Twice a week.
Twice a week, putting out the content. All right. And we're gonna have to do some collabs, some more collabs.
Yes.
We got to get you on the Robbie show.
We already got the smart car send off here shortly, so that's one of them in the works. So
that is happening. All right, I am super stoked about that. All right, if you guys are new to the channel and you're like, what the heck is it that we do here? Thank you, number one, for checking us out and sticking around this long. What we do is we dig through bring a trailer and Cars and Bids like you do, because you love cars and you love watching and seeing what the market's doing. So we find the most interesting one out of all of them, and we have a conversation with you about it. And then we get to the fun part. We make a prediction as to what we think is going to happen with that car's auction. At the end of the show, stick around. Make sure you get to the end, because on the other side, we will go in the future and we will reconcile our wrong predictions with what actually happens.
Yahtzee.
Sometimes we get Yahtzees. Lucky we call the right-on ones Yahtzee. So since we have an expert today, maybe we'll get some Yahtzees in here. We never do.
Yes, indeed.
All right, you excited about the car today? Let's find out what it is.
All right, JP, Doug DeMuro has sourced for our perusal and enjoyment this beautiful 1988 Lamborghini Countach LP 5000 Quattro This car only has 10,800 miles and is listed for sale out of New Canaan, Connecticut. JP, just a really special car. Lamborghini had been making the Countach since the early 70s, but from what I have learned, the 1988 Lamborghini Countach was the first car that Lamborghini legally federalized for the U.S. market, referred to sometimes as the 1988 and a half model. It is one of 631 5,000 Quattrovalvos ever produced, and it's equipped with a metric odometer, so it's showing 17,300 kilometers, which is essentially 10,800 miles. What else can I tell you? It looks stunning in the yellow paint, the fly yellow, which is a Ferrari color, and it has those iconic, in my opinion, the prettier 15-inch OZ wheels, the staggered width wheels, which are really, really gorgeous. What else can I tell you about this car? I put a bunch of other things. The car was also punched out to 5.2 liter and turned to fuel injection. And then, of course, they added the 4-valve head for the V12. So that made horsepower grow to 414 horsepower, which is a lot. Even by today's standards, this car can get out of its own way. As I understand, these cars are atrocious to drive. I have ridden as a passenger in one, but I've never sat behind the wheel of a Countach. I would love to do it, but I don't really pine to own one. Obviously, they hired a professional photographer as you're going through these photos, JP. There's about 250 photos in the bucket, which is a ton for Cars and Bids. Very rarely do you see that many photos on a car at auction at Cars and Bids. But almost every one of these photos looks like it was done by a professional photographer and could have been a poster from the 80s in your bedroom when you were a kid. Let me see if I forgot anything in my notes before I send it over to you, Lucky. Yeah, Testa DeMuro is the name of the interior with that brown. First Countach for the U.S. market. That, I think, is really kind of the big thing. So even though they've been making the Countach for about a decade at this point, it was the first one that was legally federalized for the U.S., and I think the car looked a little different in the following year with different wheels and some other things. So kind of a rare bird being a U.S. version, but nice car. The question will be whether Doug DeMuro and the Cars and Bids platform can get the retail number that the consignor for this car is looking for. With these photos and this rare a car, I'm just going to say it preemptively. This car should have been on Bring a Trailer, or it should have gone to a live auction. Could the owner have held out and gotten top dollar for it in Monterey at one of the live auctions? That would be a question I think that is worth discussing. But Lucky, I know you know these cars probably better than I do. I've always just sort of been a fanboy where I thought they were cool because they're so wildly exotic. You know, it's not necessarily the first exotic car, but it's certainly the first like real supercar that just looked like an absolute spaceship. But it's never a car I ever wanted to own because I think it's a little bit of that look at me thing, which it's like kind of too much for me. But Lucky, I send it to you. What do you think of this car? What do you think of the platform? Because we haven't done a car together on Cars and Bids. And then we'll get to what you think is going to happen here.
Okay. Well, actually, I think you hit a lot of points that are very important that we're going to go over. So first one is 100%. This should be on another platform. This should have been run, actually, I think, at Barrett-Jackson, because these cars have such an amazing look to them that when people see these things in person, they absolutely like just blow their mind. I had the exact same poster of a white, red, and yellow Countach on my wall. This was a car that I idolized as a kid. And in the mid-2000s, after the 2008 crash, I had an opportunity to buy one of these things for $60K. And I remember the customer bringing it in. And we were driving it around the lot. And I can perfectly say with 100% transparency that these things are absolute dog shit when it comes to driving. It is a nightmare. Your calf will die. You're smashed up. If you have larger than a 9.5 foot size shoe, you are totally screwed. You can't shift in this thing. And my favorite is when we were backing up, the whole thing of literally sitting on the still to see behind you is 100% true. Now, don't get me wrong. These are, I think, one of the most iconic cars of the 80s. And I still think that there's a massive following for this. Now, during the pandemic, we saw these prices go to economic heights because people with that nostalgia and all these new, I call them crypto bros, people that are my age and a little bit younger that got a bunch of money that grew up with these posters on the wall, saw how iconic they were. They started way overpaying. Now, I think the market is actually going the other way when it comes to these cars because people are realizing that they can't really drive them, that they are great to look at, they're fun to play with and to have in your garage, but you cannot drive these things. Every time I see one of these on a rally, I see one at a car show, if they're carbureted, they're dying. If they're fuel injected, they leak or catch on fire. So they're not as dependable and reliable. I know the Stradman just bought one and drove it across country. That's probably one of the few things you'll see somebody not really blowing up and catching on fire with them. But they're an amazing car for what they look like. So if somebody wants a beautiful piece of art with 10,000 miles to sit in their lot, I think it's going to go. But I honestly believe that Cars and Bids is not going to bring them what they actually want for it.
Oh, man. I couldn't agree more. I like all those takes.
It's hard to disagree with any of that. Lucky being in Vegas, how awesome would this be down the strip? This is our good friends at DWA Driving While Awesome, the founders of Radwood, they have a phrase that they use all the time, which it's a sense of occasion. There is no car that I can think of that would have a greater sense of occasion than this car. And I think that's what the appeal of it from a pragmatic point of view really is at this point. Like you said, Lucky, you're not rallying this car. You're not tracking this thing. You're not doing anything other than, okay, it's that once a year. It's the biggest car show. Maybe you're going to Vegas Auto Fest and you got to have the car that's the showstopper, or it's your anniversary or birthday or a big party, or you got an album dropping on Friday or something like that. And you're like, okay, I got to go to my launch party. And you got a flex. Well, this is the biggest flex you can possibly get. I don't know. There are definitely cars that are worth more. Like you could go get, I don't know, maybe an SVJ, like a brand new Lamborghini, the top of the line or whatever, that might be technically worth more. Of course, that's maybe a bad example because they're probably worth about the same. But you could spend $1 million on a car and not have the same eyeball that this car has. This thing will attract attention no matter what. The question is, are there people that have the money for them who haven't gotten one already, still looking for one? And so I'm going to say to Michael Deeb, give us the numbers. Let's get to it. What's this thing going to bring?
So John, our car doesn't close for several days from now. So let's say probably closes in like 5 or 6 days from now. It is sitting at $255,000 on 12 bids, but it closes 6 days from now. Now, in my opinion, I think this is a $650,000 example, which would be like a full retail number for the model for a Quattrovalvole Countach in the U.S. But I don't think that's going to happen here on Cars and Bids. So I'm not betting against the car. I'm betting against the platform and the Cars and Bids audience. So while I think the car is worth $650,000, I think it's going to fall short by at least $100,000. So I'm going to say $550,000. But if I was to say I'm wrong, it's because I'm over. I wouldn't be surprised if this car stalled out at $400,000 or $500,000. I don't think Doug has the audience for this car. So I'm going to give it to you, Lucky, at $550,000. Tongue in cheek, 100,000 below what I think the car is worth, but I just think it's going to fail to sell by falling short. Where do you think it's going to fall short at? What's your number falling short on this platform?
It's funny. I'll say the same thing, almost sound verbatim, but I'm actually going to go around $457,000.
All right, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I don't think the market is anywhere where it used to be. The popularity of these cars are kind of going down, and now that more and more YouTube channels like ours and other ones are showing how unreliable and how unfun these cars are to drive. When you can buy, like you said, an SVJ, even an early model Diablo, a Murcielago, you can get way more bang for your buck, and something that's collectible and something that's exotic and appeasing. So to me, when it becomes between this and maybe buying 7 DeLoreans and still having money left over for an old school slant nose Porsche, I would much rather pick those than picking this one Countach. So I'm around the 457 marker. I'll be shocked if it even gets there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I actually agree with all of that. Doug is the biggest weirdo in the business, and this car is definitely in that category, even though it's bling and badass and it's the Countach, it's the weird version of it because it's got all the strakes and all the wings and all that kind of stuff. And of course, Doug did make a video. He made one of his films about this car, which means it's going to get some eyeballs. I mean, that video alone will probably get 1 million views, maybe more. Doug DeMuro just got $37 million. He bought himself a Carrera GT. Maybe he buys this car. I see him. This is absolutely a Doug DeMuro car for him. Of all the cars out there,
I fit in it.
Whatever. He's not gonna. He would never drive it anyway. He would just look at it and go, "This is." This car. The length of this car. When you see him in real life, they're really not that big. His arm span and this car are probably about the same length, and he would have to do this thing. No, I don't know. Yeah, I'll say 500. I'm just going to go right smack, boom, 500. I'm going to be surprised if it makes $500,000. And I do think that the market is absolutely softening on this kind of stuff. But I am still kind of thinking that if you are looking at hedging your bets, if you're worried about inflation, if you're worried about, and you have that kind of money where you're sitting around going, well, I already have a bunch of mansions. I already have a bunch of stuff. I already have a bunch of crypto. I've got a bunch of gold. Where else can I hedge against inflation? I don't think this is the worst car in the world for someone to get, because it is the most iconic thing with four wheels that there really is. And at some point this will bounce back, if any car ever would, because it's art. It's not about driving this car. This is something to behold, not to really be driven, unfortunately.
I have a question for Lucky JP before we go to commercial, and that is, let's say that the three of us are right, and somewhere in our numbers this car fails to sell on Cars and Bids, and it is a uber distinctive example because of the bright yellow paint and the low mileage. How long is this car burnt for by failing to sell on Cars and Bids before somebody could then bring it back to market on a different platform or a live auction, where it would be considered fresh again and it wouldn't suffer from the stigmatism of having failed to sell in the spring of 2023? Can he sell it in Monterey, or could he sell it on Bring a Trailer in the fall, or does it have to wait until Barrett Jackson in January? Lucky, what would you coach somebody, like if you were talking to the consignor and he had already committed to Cars and Bids and you knew in your heart it wasn't going to sell, how long does he have to sit on it before he can bring it back to market?
I have kind of a weird backdoor approach to this. I honestly believe that there's probably a sales price that they already agreed to pay the owner to probably get it up to X amount of dollars, and then anything above that they're probably going to get. So I believe that somehow this will magically make its reserve, because for this car to be this unique and not hit, it's burned for at least a year and a half, because every
year and a half. There you go.
Yeah, they're just going to talk bad about it, and they're going to be like, look, it didn't sell for this, so I'll offer you even less than the original amount. So I think that Doug is
18 months. Yeah,
that he's actually going to do something where it's going to be like a backdoor kind of buyout thing.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, we know that sometimes the auction houses will bring up the extra, or not the auction houses, but the auction sites will kind of split the difference if it's within a certain bubble. I don't know. I don't know if the car would necessarily be burned as bad, given that if it failed to sell on Cars and Bids. If it failed to sell on Bring a Trailer, I think you're toast. But Cars and Bids, I think people would give the car some benefit of the doubt if this car showed up in Monterey at one of the big live auctions, because of what you said, Lucky. This is the kind of thing that rolls up and you're at something like Car Week and you've been seeing stuff like this and displays all over the place. This car is going to get the eyeballs, and I think people would be like, well, it was just Doug DeMuro's site, and his, everyone there is buying lowered Acuras and stuff like that. They're not buying this stuff. So maybe he has a little bit better off. What do you think of that?
I mean, that's fair.
Okay.
I just my big thing, I still feel like he's that unique of a car, that rare, it's gonna trip a bunch of alarms in people once they see that the market's softening. And this is gonna be a perfect example of why you shouldn't buy a Countach. And I think if this thing doesn't sell, it's gonna spell a lot of doom and gloom for whoever's in the market for a Countach or who's thinking of selling theirs. Because I know about 4 people personally that are currently restoring these types of cars just because they want to get on the hype market of people overpaying for Countaches.
I can see
the market went crazy.
I can see a video on the Lucky Lopez channel next week. Countach fails to sell on Cars and Bids. Why not to buy a classic Lambo now? We can see this show is all about the future. Now is the time to get in on that future machine and lock in your bid below. Let us know what you think is going to happen to this car's auction. And we're going to talk to our friends at Godden Classic first, and then we'll come back and we'll find out what happened with this auction. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you've got to call our friend Steve at Godden. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Holy cow, look at that. Deeb went and dug through his closet there in the studio to find a hoodie that matches today's car. Thanks again to Lucky Lopez. Thanks, buddy, for hanging out in the first half of the show. He's like, I am not sticking around with the rest of this thing with you two yahoos. You're on your own. He's out. So we are back. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Reconcile your own cars, I think was his last words,
Something like that. All right. Well, shucks, man. What happened with this crazy 80s icon?
JP, so couple things. This is a very interesting car. I'm really glad we reviewed it. So one, I missed something when I looked at the interesting stuff on Cars and Bids, that despite this car being the first year that the Countach was sold in the United States, and this car being a U.S. car, in 2010, somebody took this car to Europe. And then in 2023, this car was re-imported to the United States out of Germany. So this car has only just come back to us. But that didn't seem to hold it, that didn't hurt its value in any shape or form. So looking at a Countach QV on Cars and Bids, I sort of bet against the platform, and I said $550,000, thinking that this was at least a $600,000 example. You came in under us under me at $500,000, and Lucky Lopez was the low man on the totem pole with his bid of just $457,000. Well, everybody turn around and bow to Doug DeMuro, because he sold this 10,000-mile example on Cars and Bids for a whopping $675,000 on 51 bids. 51 bids was our high bid count of the week. Doug DeMuro, once again, we owe you all an apology. Man, oh man, that is a strong result. JP, I will tell you unequivocally, that is a retail number for the model. That number makes sense for the car. The surprise here that Doug DeMuro and his, khaki shorts and printed T-shirts was the one to achieve it. I do not believe that RM Sotheby's or Bring a Trailer could have gotten any significant amount of money more than what Doug DeMuro just did for this consignor. It is worth remembering that he reviewed the car, but I don't think his review had as much to do with the fact that this is a one of 9, I think, in the Fly Yellow, the Ferrari Fly Giallo Yellow, and the 10,000-mile example of a first-year U.S. Countach. Spectacular color, spectacular condition, spectacular photographs, and spectacular results. Everybody, I'm like, wow, congratulations. And I won. I was a high man on that. Even though I missed it by $125,000, I showed you two fools, didn't I?
Yeah, man. I mean, look at this thing. It really, we've seen, everyone's talking about corrections in the market or softening or recessions or all those things or inflation. That tends to be my, kind of broken record. And I think that that inflation is definitely part of this equation when it comes to the value or the amount of money that this particular car brought. There are a lot of cars, like, say, the other day we talked about an absurdly stupid I think it was a 2000 Mustang R, right?
Yeah,
that is just
beautiful
absolute car. Just okay, sure, right? And how stupid people are to want them at all. Look, and people say that it's one of 300 or something like that. It's one of 300 of thousands and thousands and thousands of cars that look exactly the same. When it comes to something like this, when it comes to what the market is seeing right now, truly rare, actually rare cars, actually special cars, things that you can't just find anywhere. You can't go into any parking lot in any garage, in any mall or any strip mall and see one of these. This is not something you're going to see every day, unless maybe you live in Beverly Hills or something like that. And even then, this is going to be a rare car. There's going to be seas of Bugattis and new Huracans and all kinds of crap like that everywhere. But you're not going to see a Fly Yellow Countach anywhere, right? Unless you go to a show or something. So, stuff like this, I think, is a safe harbor if you are, in fact, worried about inflation or you are worried about the economy crashing or markets. There's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of places. If you're looking for a hedge on currency, if you're looking a hedge long term, I don't think this is a bad place to park some money. Maybe the value goes down, but I don't think the price is going to go down that much. And in the long term, these are definitely going to be something. Even when cars are no longer allowed in the world. And let's face it, that writing is on the wall, right? 10, 20, 30 years from now, you won't even be able to drive a car, right? Rare Hyundai, if there is such a thing, isn't going to be worth anything. But this car is art. You can't really drive this thing now. So who cares? This is something to behold and look at. So yeah, something like this will always be worth something because it is just, when it comes right down to it, it's something that Michelangelo painted on a roof. Doesn't matter if it has any practical value at all. It's just a beautiful thing in and of itself. So yeah, kudos to Doug DeMuro for bringing the big money. I think that his platform every now and then does make sense for something this weird because he's the king of the weird, and I do think that his film did make a difference on this car because it's only going to bring, he gets 1 million+ views on everything that he makes, so why not?
Oh yeah, let's read that.
Yeah,
all right.
It's just like, it's amazing, this car. So what do you think, Michael D? What do you think? I mean, I know you just told me.
I'm glad you brought up views because I did forget to look at that. This car got 105,000 views. So yeah, his video definitely helped, and just the fact that it's a bright yellow Countach. JP, I've seen several Countaches in my life. I cannot recall ever seeing a yellow one in person. It's definitely a rare car. So there you go.
Reminds me of my R8. No, it doesn't. It's just that it's yellow. All right. Well, what do you guys think of the results of this super rad car? This is Radwood, not just royalty, but Radwood like God status or something like that. I don't think, it's going to be hard to show this thing up. So yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Nerd Herd, you guys are rocking it. We are, speaking of rockets, we are so dang close to the 1,000.
Let's go.
We are right there. When we get to 1,000, we're going to change some things up. So help us out. Share this video. Hit the subscribe, like, and notification button if you're new to the channel. If you found us through Lucky, thank you for checking us out. And we hope that you like the show and you stick around and watch future episodes. We'll get Lucky back on in future eps as well. We'll see you guys tomorrow or something. We'll figure out where the end of this show. There it is.